Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be taking a tour of all the flower beds as they are today in Georgia, January 30th. We're going to be walking around and looking at what's blooming, what's waking up, what's almost there, and then we'll come back each month and see how the garden progresses. As you can see behind me, my giant Forsythia bush is already putting on blooms, as well as many of the daffodils. So without further ado, let's go for a walk. We are going to start up by the beds by my office. There's my studio, as I call it. There's a lot that's still sleeping, but I wanted to give you an idea of what's waking up at this point in January, and then we'll take another look in February and so forth and so on. One of the first things that blooms in my yard are the Piedmont Azaleas, and I will insert a picture of what those look like. And as you can see, they're all budded up. February is their time to shine, so that's coming up next month. As you can see, there's a lot that's still green, which is why I have them planted. This is rainbow Ascot Euphorbia right there, as well as an emerald Arborvitae. Those green iris looking things are ground orchids. That's a jubilation gardenia. Some nandina. This is not the spreading invasive kind. I've had these same two plants for the last 11 years, and that's what they do. This is a Japanese maple that I purchased on clearance at Lowe's, and it was so puny that it kept flopping. So this was my improvised staking mechanism. I have to reattach the right branch onto the trellising system because the last windstorm that we had knocked it off. I just installed this bird bath this fall while I was cleaning up and making ready this bed. As you can see, some of the daffodils over here are waking up. You can see them there on the ground, right there. Again, this is rainbow Ascot Euphorbia right there. And irises, as well as lamb's ear. There's some penstemon in here, baptisia, a whole bunch of things that are still sleeping. There is another gardenia. Please excuse the mess on my porch. I use the porch as a place to work when it's raining outside. And since it's spring here in Georgia, we're still in our rainy season. I'm building 2 of these smaller obelisks, and when we get into the other flower beds, I'll show you the other 2 that I've built and still have 2 more to build. So I have a total of 4 more to do. But yeah, anyway, loving this Cryptomeria and irises and daffodils that are blooming. Even the roses are waking up. It's way too early for them. While you're looking, you may see vines that need to be pruned, roses that look scraggly, and hydrangeas that need to be cut back. But I tend to wait until the right times to prune things. So this is still what the garden looks like in January. That's my cutting station that I'm using for the obelisks that I'm making. There you go. All right, we come over to this area and you can see the Forsythia tree is waking up. The bush is waking up. Lots of blooms on there, and behind it are daffodils that are blooming. We'll take a closer look in a sec. If you look right here, you will see that I've got these pots covered with mesh hardware cloth. That's because the squirrels were eating the bulbs. They've since left them alone. I need to add some more bird food to my bird feeders. And in the wintertime is the only time I put out bird food, because as big as my gardens are and as much as I try to have berries and foods. By this time in winter, they are ready for some more, so I tend to feed them. I have a video that shows when I moved this lemon cypress from here to there, and I think it looks perfect. It echoes the color of this other Arborvitae down here. And I also have a video that shows when I planted those. This is a path between these two beds, and I've left this here because the gas connection to my office is right here, and they can either walk on this side or through my other flower bed to get to repairs and the electrical and plumbing and the heating and cooling. So I've left this path, and I think it works very well to have that path there. This is the propane tank for the house. It's covered with algae and pollen, so it needs a good pressure washing. But yes, so this is a Edgeworthia right here. This is a lilac bush, a butterfly bush. There's a rose bush here. There's a pink dogwood, and this is a limelight hydrangea. This bed was edged in another video that I've got posted. And as you can see here, we've got all kinds of things waking up. There are irises and daffodils. There are irises here and daffodils there. This is a quince bush right here, and it too is waking up. These rose bushes all need to be pruned. There's more daffodils here that are waking up. I recently extended this bed from where those rose bushes are down further and added this dwarf Alberta spruce, as well as a hibiscus, a hardy hibiscus, some daffodils, some irises, and a peony bush. I have a few things else to add here just so to fill out the end of this bed. While I was adding to the end of the bed, I decided to put rocks around the rest of the bed, and I did that the same day. So this is the other side of that bed. My office is in the background. You can see I have daffodils, irises, tulips. There's even a red twig dogwood right there. And I call this Mama's bench because whenever my mom comes outside and it's a nice day, she tends to sit here. That's the vegetable garden behind, and you can get a very good view of how big it is. That tour will be reserved for another day. I have another sitting area on this side of the garden, and those are two nice sized climbing roses that goes up each side of that arbor. We're going to swing to this flower bed here. It's almost an island bed. Behind it is the shade garden, which extends from there all the way up the driveway. And there's Lola, trying to see how far she can get before I notice her. So this flower bed here has a bird bath in it, and you'll notice that's a theme. I like having water sources for my garden. I created a wildlife habitat, and I realized I have all the elements for that. So that's something I'm going to work on this year, is getting certified as a wildlife habitat, because I have places for them to hide, places for them to raise their babies. I have native food sources. I have water sources. We have a creek in the back, plus I have bird baths all over the place. So I've met all their requirements, and it's just getting it to go. But this flower bed here has a crabapple tree right here, has a Japanese maple right there, and then different hydrangeas and rose bushes. In this bed, I have that Forever Goldy Arborvitae, as well as that Moho Liposporium from Southern Living Plants. Next to it is a tiny wine 9-bark from Monrovia. And as you can see over here again, you see more daffodils coming up. There is a beautiful bowl of beauty peony bush that's right here. And on the obelisks is a white heirloom climbing rose, as well as a Niobe Clematis. So it makes for a pretty show. A couple of these roses in here were gifts from my children, and so I wanted to have a prominent place for them. In this bed here as well, I have a couple of roses from one of my daughters. I have 2 daughters, and one of them gave me 2, so I put 2 here and 2 in the other bed. All right, let's take a look. Here's this dwarf Alberta spruce, mirrors the one that's over here. And we have similar view here. One of the things that we are working on is a nursery for my husband, and you can see that up here. We're going to correct this depression in this driveway going up towards the well house up there. It's going to get a new door and painted. That's a project for this year. And level this off so it's a bit safer for him. But over here we have more daffodils blooming, and I have a variety of just the plain old yellow daffodils, as well as a Sion daffodil, which is an heirloom variety that I was given by a friend, and it has naturalized and spread in my yard. In this bed also, right here, are snowdrops, which have just sprung up. So probably in the next video, you will see those blooming. This is a little lime hydrangea. This one right here is a limelight hydrangea. It just looks like twigs. This is a quick fire hydrangea here. And then I have hibiscuses and daylilies and irises and other things. As you can see, it's beginning to wake up. Here is that Arborvitae from this side, and that's the underside to my studio. I have not closed it in yet because we're hoping to have all the plumbing and gas dealt with this year, and once that's done, then we'll close it in so no animals can go underneath it. Here's one more Nandina that I planted here, and that's it. This is my husband's chariot. He uses this to get around the yard. But daffodils that some of them have bloomed already, some are going to bloom. I have hyacinths that are coming up, and I'll show you those in this bed here. My aunt, Hyacinth, is my favorite aunt. Not supposed to have a favorite, but she's my favorite. And there's a reason she's my favorite. But there's a hyacinth there. Some more over here that are blooming. And these are clematises. On this, you can see that it's beginning to wake up. There's that green on that stem right there. There are 2 clematises on each of these 3 trellises along the side of the house. Here's my hose link for my husband. Makes it easy for him to water. More flowers here, different dahlias, lilies, and there's even a peony here as well. Forgive the mess. This is a temporary situation that we did for my husband to have access to our house once he got hurt. And that's his ramp there. Miss Lola's toy, you see there. But anyway, this will be redone when we do our front porch. We want it to be the same material. We're looking at using the decking material that doesn't need to be replaced, and then covering this area here. Continuing with our tour, and there's really not much in the shade garden to see at this time. It's got native azaleas, rhododendrons, parises, hydrangeas, hellebores, columbine, Solomon seal, but all those things are still sleeping. So I will show you once those things wake up. This is a waterfall that I got off of, it's a fountain that looks like a waterfall that I got off of Facebook Marketplace. And I need to find the right location for it in the garden and get it placed. Those mums need to be, I'm waiting to see if they're alive. Somebody ran them over. I think it's UPS when they came here, so forgive me. But I need to see if they're alive after our freeze before planting them in the landscape. But this is the front border. It goes all the way down, and you can see 2 of the obelisks that I built. Could you believe I built these? I'm not a handy person, so they're not 100% perfect, but I'm getting better each one that I do. And they are there for climbing roses and clematises. On these, first one is the Little Mermaid clematis, as well as it's going to have an Eden climbing rose. I won that in a giveaway, so I'm going to plant that there. I have here at the entrance of the garden a bench that I got off Facebook Marketplace to match the one up by my office. And it's a nice little place to sit and just observe the vista of the entire front of the garden. This bed here is just beginning to wake up, and you can see all these little green shoots. There are daffodils and tulips planted in here, as well as asters and just a bunch of different things that bloom at different times of the season. But you can see daffodils here and throughout. Let's take a look here. See in front of the house there, we have daffodils blooming. And here we have daffodils, tulips, irises that are beginning to wake up. Y'all, forgive my porch. We were supposed to replace it. My husband got hurt, so funds were diverted. But the next big project we're going to do is to replace the porch front and the side one and cover them. All right, more daffodils that are coming up. All those green that you see are daffodils for the most part. There's some muscari that have bloomed. You see that purple? And more daffodils there, just all throughout. And most of them have perennialized, so I don't have to plant them, but each year I add so that one day it will be a complete sea of daffodils in the spring. Here I have around this tree more daffodils, tulips, and irises. There is also some rose campion around here. This bed wraps around the front porch. There's my circular memorial flower garden. And this is just continuing down the long border. Those white chairs that you see back there, that's my secret garden area. And I have a video coming up on what my plans are for that area this year. That's a cami, I can't remember the name of it, but it's a type of cypress that slow growing, but I got it for $5, so I'm going to put it somewhere and just let it do its thing over time. I was thinking here, but then I was thinking of removing a gardenia that's in front of the house here and putting it here for interest in this garden bed. This week, in between rain showers, I want to get these ferns cleaned out, cut back all of that, and as you can see, I was working out here in the memory garden are 10 rose bushes and a bunch of other things that I've planted in memory of different people. This dappled willow right here was planted in memory of my nephew who passed away last March. I have 2 roses that I added in memory of a cousin who was killed, and so forth and so on. I figure what I will do is each time I suffer a loss, I can plant something for someone, and that's a good way to remember them. You can see some lamb's ear here. That's the Helen von Stein lamb's ear, and they smell awesome. But yes, I figure replacing a bad memory with a good one and have a tribute to that person right in my garden, my favorite place. So I get to think of them a lot, but think of them in a good way. More limelight hydrangeas you can see going back the other way. That's where we are from Birdhouse. The birdhouse has 2 clematises that climb up on one on either side. Here's another bird bath. I think last time I counted, I had 6 or 7. I have 7 bird baths. These gold bushes that you see are Paul's gold cypress. They're supposed to be 3 by 3, not too big. That's another evergreen here. This one gets about, I'm going to say 4 feet tall and more. But that's what works. I love this moss-covered stump. It all adds interest to the garden. This obelisk, the rose is waking up as well. And those little green leaves are on a spirea, Broadle's wreath spirea. So many things in this flower bed. I'm afraid of what has died because of Winter Storm Elliott. There are a lot of dead looking things, but I'm waiting to remove and or prune anything. There's another of those Cryptomerias. And these obelisks all contain clematises. That one's waking up too. It's got some green leaves. This contorted thing is a willow. However, I think it may have died. So we'll see. But there's another bird bath here. This is my sitting area next to my secret garden area. It's got a lot of hostas in these pots. I've also planted tulips and daffodils in them. And this is Big Bertha, my oak leaf hydrangea. One of my heirloom oak leaf hydrangeas. I also have another hydrangea planted right here as well as there, and then all around this bed. It also has snowball bush, Somel viburnum. Excuse the patio. I have to keep the cushions like this or Diego goes on here and makes a mess with his muddy self. This rose is a Bathsheba climbing rose as well as a jasmine. And over here is another climbing rose and honeysuckle. So we'll see how that looks this year. Got daffodils and tulips planted around the front of this bed here. It also has a Sarah Bernhardt peony, which has not woken up yet. But I see traces of the tulips that are beginning to wake up. Patio again, and around the patio area, lots of tulips and daffodils in these little jutted out areas. This pot was a gift from a friend, and I plan to add some flowy things and some spiky things. I've got great plans for it, as well as the urn behind it this year. This is my husband's other ramp, and the flower bed around it has roses, verbascum, irises, penstemon. There is a gardenia, more irises, and more roses. So in this bed, we have these tiny nandinas right here. Irises, it has baptisia. It just has a plethora of things, most of which are asleep, but you can see some daffodils. There's another Arborvitae, as well as another one of those false gold. And back there is a pink dogwood. This is a lace leaf Japanese maple. Irises. This is a heirloom climbing rose on this trellis, and it's made its way over. This side is much more prolific than this side here, but we're working on it. I'm going to prune them back, and hopefully they branch and whatnot for me, but I'm going to do that after it blooms. This is a limelight hydrangea, and there's also a strawberry vanilla hydrangea in there, and another spirea, bridal's wreath. Now, I will confess I've not spent a lot of time back here this year working, so besides cleaning up around the porch, this is the next area. This is a fringe tree. They also call them Grancy Greybeard, but it's a fringe tree. All of this has to be re-leveled. My husband used to have his blackberry nursery. He would trial things out here and then move them over into the orchard. And that is the orchard over there. And that's the creek. That's a bridge to cross over to the other side. Okay. This bed, as I said, I've not done anything to it since fall. It's the last one to clean up. You see how good the front looks? Well, this is the abandoned child, but not this year. So I've got a lot of work to do to prune things back. There's some things that I need to divide, and I will be doing that shortly. Back here, I have my mop head hydrangeas, as well as some azaleas. Do you see how big these things are? Yeah, look at how large those things are. And they've been pruned. Each year I prune them back at the end of the season. So I'm going to have to wait until they bloom this year. And once they have bloomed, I'm going to chop them back until the foundation level of the house. And by spring next year, they'll look like this again. They just really like that spot. The soil there is acidic. And so I have happy plants. Okay. I have rose campion, I have lamb's ear, I have drift roses and regular roses, daylilies, and all kinds of hydrangeas back here. I have sedums, I have anemones, peonies, penstemon, irises, you name it, it's in this bed. It just needs some love and attention. But as you can see, daffodils are getting ready to bloom here as well. All along the edge, you could see them dotted to the front. See all this moss? I plan to take some and put it in certain places in the yard. Look at that. So once we finish building, we are going to add gutters. That's why we have so much moss here. But I'm going to take it in the meantime and put it on some of my pots and in areas where I want the moss to creep. See the little creek back there? It's wider in some areas than in others. And we're back. Made a perfect trip around the yard. Is that not a nice view? Isn't that a nice view, y'all? And of course, there's my shadow. Did you catch her throughout the video? Wherever I was, there she was. I just love my yard. Brings me joy. Thank you so much for joining us today as we took a walk around the yard and looked at our various beds and saw what was blooming and what was coming up. As always, if you've enjoyed this content, please consider subscribing. Happy gardening!